What is good, everybody? This is your boy Bass, and as I said before in my past videos, I will put up a couple of videos pertaining to my major. And if you don't know my major, I'm a game design student at George Mason University, and I'm specializing in 3D modeling and texturing using Photoshop and many other programs. So the thought process of this video is going from a high poly to a low poly. Now, the high poly videos, unfortunately, I do not have. The recording process got a little bit messed up, so I don't have the high poly. So I'm gonna just start with the low poly, and then I'm gonna start with the high poly, which I've already made, and I'm gonna break it down to the low poly. Alright, so let's get started. So I'm gonna start with the back of the model. I'm gonna take off the Turbo Smooth modifier, and I'm gonna start control clicking edges by double clicking them. Now, the one thing that you have to remember, and I made the mistake first, and then I saw it and corrected myself because I hit Control Z and Control Y just to make sure I'm not taking away from the silhouette. When you're taking away from edges, you don't want to go, just gung ho and start clicking on everything. The best possible way to do this, and the best process, is by making sure you're still keeping the general silhouette of the high poly model. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but just keeping the general silhouette will allow the high poly to bake cleanly on the low poly, and you don't have any buckling, and you don't have any artifacts in your bake. Now, from right here, I am welding down the straighter side of this piece, and I'm not really holding any edges. Now, the reason why I'm not doing it in the front is because it's a curve and I want to keep that silhouette. So right here I'm trying to dictate to myself whether or not I want to use edge select ring and I want to just take out edges, or do I want to just do them manually. So I just decided to just handle it manually first, and then I'm going to target weld 2 more edges to kind of keep it as clean as possible. Going back down to the bottom of the model, I'm going to continue with the process of breaking down certain edges into triangles. And then I saw that, it looks a little funky right here, so I'm going to just add an edge back right here, even though I just broke it down. And I probably could have not kept that single triangle edge in the middle, so I'll check that out on my model, and I'll just go and take it out. Moving on to the next piece, this is a cylindrical piece, and I'm going to start by selecting the edge and hitting ring select in the graphite modeling tools above, and then I'm gonna bridge across the cylinder because I've broke it down to a place where I believe that will be easier to bake on and not really breaking it down too much. And I was trying to bridge right there. I really don't know why, but I just hit cap poly. Then moving on to if you want to call this a cartridge, you can call it that. This piece I really didn't break down as much, is because I still wanted to keep the form on certain things, and I figured to add certain textures on top, I wanted to keep certain lines in certain places, because with this indent right here, certain edges connect, so I really couldn't take away from it as much as possible. Again, I'm double clicking on the edge to get the whole ring of the edge, but usually, depending on how well you have created the high poly or the low poly, if the ring can go all the way around. If it doesn't, that's fine. It's just it's not able to compute what you're trying to do. It's usually easier on squares. When you get to more complicated pieces, it's a little bit harder to do. Now with this cartridge, the process of making it really wasn't easy. I had to combine a couple of pieces. I had to extrude a couple of pieces, extrude in just to get to certain indents that I wanted. I will put the picture up of the pistol that I based it upon, and when I was welding down here, I noticed that I left a couple of pieces from the high poly model that initially had, it really wasn't welded right. So right here, I'm gonna fix it right here, and then when I go back to the high poly model, I really shouldn't have to fix it there unless it's some buckling that I don't want. Then I'll go back to the edit poly and I'll fix it there. so the Highpoly really doesn't have a problem. But if I don't see buckling, then I'm gonna just leave it the way it is. But right here I'm just trying to fix edges that I've seen to where it really didn't break down right. And right here I was taking away from the silhouette, so I only took out the ring according to where the indent is, and I just decided to target weld, to cut an edge right there so it fits a little bit smoothly. And I'm checking right here to see if these were open edges or holes in the mesh, but it wasn't. So I just was like, okay, well, just probably just isolated vertices. And I see right here, it's an edge that's a little bit lower than the edge, so I'm gonna just target weld this. And I'm checking to see, if they mirror each other, if it's clean as possible. Now, smoothing grooves, when it comes to Highpoly models, having to break that down is another video within itself. Again, it's a process that I'm learning and I'm still learning, so I really don't want to tell people the wrong information. But if you want to know, you should search on Google. His name is Racer455 or Ben Bolton. This is the process that I've learned from them, from watching their videos and going online in forums. And right here, I'm starting with the floating geometry. I'm gonna delete those and go directly to the trigger. This is probably the easiest part. I'm just control clicking and double clicking on edges that I feel like I don't need. I'm gonna delete and then check to see if it takes away from the silhouette. And if I'm all clear, then I move on to the next spot. I'm just checking the trigger just to make sure it's what I want and the silhouette is consistent. Moving on to the lower part of this Sci-Fi pistol. This part wasn't too bad in itself, just a lot of control edges, and it was a little bit buckling right there in the turbo smooth modifier, so that's why you have a ring within the ring, if you want to call it that. Basically control clicking, trying to keep the process as quick as possible. And I could have broke down the back a little bit more, and I think I really did. Yeah, I did. I thought I left a little bit of edges in there from my memory. Now, I've been studying game design since 2009, and I guess the process of getting into it was when I got accepted into George Mason University. Just touching a little bit on myself so people know who I am. When I got accepted into George Mason University, I went to a transfer student orientation, and a teacher by the name of Matt Nolans came up to me and said, you should check this program out. Me thinking to myself, I was going to come into Mason and just continue in music from the past schools that I have gone to. And once I started to take a little bit classes and started to understand what game design was, it really became a passion, and it ultimately became a respect. And I think a lot of people don't respect games as much as they should. They make YouTube videos about them, and that's really it. It's not how many man hours went into this, and how many blood, sweat, and tears or long nights. But that's a video within itself. Going back to these, I guess, handle guards, if you want to call them that. I didn't like the process that I took right here. It was just too many edges that was just pulling from across the model. So I decided to go all the way back, and start from the Highpoly itself, because I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was basically getting the same thing over and over again. So I just deleted the front, and I was like, alright, it's not working, I'm gonna weld it. Then I'm gonna start with the actual handle, the handle of the gun, or the grip. Now with this, I didn't notice, and which you should always put on back facing culling, is that the back of it was actually flipped, and I really didn't notice this, and it was probably because I was modeling it from the left, and when I pulled the edge, I pulled it from a different view, and I was shift dragging, which is a technique in Max, and I shift dragged from a different view, and I ended up having back facing on the back side of this grip. So again, I'm trying to break down the model as easy as I can. without really taking away from the silhouette. And once I find a flow that I want, I typically continue that flow until I see something that doesn't look right. And again, learning this process hasn't been easy. And I'm gonna be honest with the people that's watching this video. My very first modeling class, I actually failed. It was because it was too extensive. I don't know if I was just overwhelmed with the class, and a lot was going on. I was a sophomore, and you know, I just kind of quit on myself, and I really felt bad, and I really didn't know if I was going to continue with game design itself. I mean, I was 2 years in, and I figured, you know, I still have enough credits for music, and I can just switch back to music and I guess go forward from there. But from talking with my girlfriend, you know, she was like, you know, you really can't quit this. You know, it's something that is destined in you, and you need to, you know, keep pushing. And she's one of the people that really inspired me that year, you know, to keep going. And when I got back into the class, maybe like a year later or like the following spring, I was actually one of the better students in the class, because, you know, I took the summer to, you know, realize, is this what I really wanted? Watch videos, did as much as I can to better myself, and I came back strong. I came back with the knowledge of the process of making models. Now right here, I had a control edge that I wanted to click, but I was kind of clicking on the edge that, you know, held the actual silhouette of the top of this piece. So I had to go back, delete it, Control Z, Control Y to check it. Now, if you was to ask me what is my favorite process or favorite step of making a model, I say that the initial, you know, start of a model, you know, is very vital. You know, it's the most important part. You know, with people who make models, or with anything, when you first start something, it's like, you know, you're so pumped about it and you're trying to get it done, and that is when you probably work the longest, when you first start something. Then it's like you kind of lose the energy. When you lose the energy, then that's when you need to stop, take a break, go do something else, and then come back to it. Maybe like a day or two later, or, you know, if you feel inspired again, then maybe an hour or two later. You know, with me, inspiration comes from many things. You know, I'll go on YouTube and I'll just watch people draw for hours and hours, or, you know, I'll look at gaming videos. It's a particular channel that I like. It's called Team Spooky. I guess I'll link them in the description if you want to check out their YouTube. I love competitive Street Fighter and Killer Instinct. You know, I think that people that know this, that can really break down a game with certain moves, you know, I think it's really cool, and I love it. I love it. So inspiration can come from many things. You just have to find it within yourself in order to better your art, or better whatever it is that you're doing. Inspiration is something that is very key, because you got to have a passion for whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's music, medical, forensics, whatever it is. You just have to have a passion for it. And that's something that I had to learn many times, is that you cannot quit on something because, you know, it hasn't gone your way, you know, maybe like the first half of it. Even with this model itself, it was something that, you know, I kind of just jumped on and I started, and I really didn't know what I was doing. And the process I'm doing right now is something that I've never said before, but I was collapsing vertices that were on a straight plane, and I figured it wouldn't take away from the silhouette, so I collapsed them all. And then right here, I'm continuing to break it down into triangles, so that the low poly is as low as possible. Now again, triangles is not a bad thing on a flat surface. If by putting a triangle in, you can see, you know, it's a little bit of artifacts or some buckling somewhere, then you need to, you know, keep it as a four-sided polygon. Now, by four-sided polygon, this is something that may be new to a lot of people, but if you look up the statistics of your model, which is the polygon count, you can actually check for triangles. Certain game engines, if the model has n-gons or hexagons or whatever you want to call it, and it's not a four-sided or a triangle, it really doesn't render them the right way, and it will be clear and it's not coming through, even though you have textured them and everything. So it's best to check your model to make sure that you either have four-sided polygons on a flat surface or triangles. Usually, you know, after you have a pretty good flow, you can kind of break it down to the way that you want it. And I wouldn't stretch this edge all the way down to the end for the simple fact that I'm stretching a triangle, and I just really couldn't risk that. And right here, I'm taking away edges that were within inside of this certain silhouette. And it was actually pretty fun making this pistol. Going from, you know, when I first started with the Highpoly and trying to break it down and trying to use my control edges and understanding smoothing groups with the turbo smooth modifier and turbo smoothing and double smoothing and all these different techniques that I've learned from various people. As I said before, by the name of Racer455, Ben Bolton, who have videos. You can go to 3dmotive.com, check there. And I'm gonna talk about these Pickaninny rails right quick. Now, I didn't have to make the whole rail. I only made 1/4. Then I mirrored it on the X, and then I put on another symmetry modifier, and then I mirrored it on the Y, what I have on the X. So that way, when I want to break it down and collapse the whole stack, that I didn't have to spend, you know, a lot of time making, you know, all these indents and bumps and stuff. So right here, I'm just collapsing down this model because I'm ready to stitch the first piece that I started with. I'm ready to stitch this on top of the main body of the Sci-Fi pistol. Now right here, I'm just copying it, and I want to copy it because I'm gonna use a technique that I guess I've come up with myself. I really haven't seen people use this yet. They probably have, but it just hasn't been on YouTube. But I'm gonna take it, use Pro Boolean and subtraction, and then I'm gonna imprint it on top of the model. And then the original piece, I have it hitting, so I don't lose it, so I don't have to start all over. Then from here, I'm just taking vertices and I'm deleting them with Control Backspace. You don't want to delete a vertice. If you delete a vertice, it will take away from the face. Control Backspacing only controls that vertice. So right here, I'm just making sure that vertices are in the proper area before I begin stitching. Now, stitching is a very delicate process. You have to make sure that you go between hitting your 1 key, which should be your vertices, and your 3 key, which checks to see for holes in your mesh. Now, if you don't do this, and you go all the way to the process of you actually adding a UV map, you might spot it in there, you might not. But then when it comes to baking the Highpoly on top of the Lowpoly, you might see a little bit of buckling artifacts, stuff that you don't want to see on top of the actual normal map bake. And then from that process, you got to go all the way back and fix, you know, what you left. So it's always good to go to X views and check to see, you know, if you have any problems. Right here, I'm just ready to stitch. I'm ready to begin the process. I'm welding certain pieces and checking to see if smoothing groups are being changed, and they are. I'm gonna go fix them later. Right here, it's no edge to control that vertice, so I'm just checking certain pieces, welding. As you can see, the smoothing group change right there. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna re-triangulate that piece right there in the later part of the video. Right here, I'm beginning the welding part. Now, it's good to have a general flow when you're stitching certain pieces. You don't want to pull a triangle one way or stitch a triangle one way and then go the opposite way for the edge next to it. So it's good to have them, and which I see it as an X. So if you have a square, you want to put it on top of something else. You want to keep them generally going the same way. So just think of an X and kind of weld to where you know it looks general and not really all over the place. Because again, it's triangles, you know, within squares. You know, if you have a square, you know, you usually have 2 triangles within that square. And right here is a piece that didn't cut well, and I was trying to figure out what I need to do, and I remembered there's only one process that you can do. Pull down the vertice, delete the face, weld it, and then use cap poly, as I did right here, in order to bring it back. Now again, by hitting your 3 key You can check to see if you have holes in your mesh. Right here, I retriangulate this, make sure it's smooth. Right here, I'm just checking for open faces or holes in my mesh. And I don't have anything, and I'm just checking the model, checking certain pieces just to make sure that it is where I want it to be. I'm deciding if I want to stitch that together. I think I'm gonna leave it for normal mapping purposes. I think I'm gonna just leave them as they are. If this video has entertained you in any type of way or gave you a new knowledge, hit that like button for me. But most importantly, subscribe to check out my other videos on this model or any of the other models that I decide to put up, or my gaming videos. I thank everybody for the support thus far. I started this channel with models, and then I went to Grand Theft Auto 5, and then, you know, a couple of other games. But I just appreciate all the feedback, and, you know, continue to follow my journey in game design or wherever I may end up. I appreciate everybody. Thank you.